Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jedley. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville, located in the shadow of the Great Blue Hills. We are so delighted and absolutely honored that you are joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in that mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network. And they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Audible, CastBox, Player FM. Wherever you find your favorite shows, you can find Reading with Your Kids. We have a really wonderful show for you today. Robert Gould is here to celebrate his middle grade series. It's called Time Soldiers Adventures, and it's a really different kind of a series. You want to listen in. We're also speaking to Jon Agee. He is here to celebrate his new picture book. It's called George and Lenny Are Always Together. Hey, my friends, I want you to meet Corky the Quirky Cow, the most musical cow you'll ever meet. Corky has a magical gift. She can mimic every animal on the farm. Pigs, ducks, chickens, you name it. Together with her friends, Corky creates a barnyard symphony so enchanting that Farmer Ken starts hosting concerts. Written by Lavelle Carlson, Corky the Quirky Cow is more than just a funny farm tale. It's a powerful tool for speech therapists, teachers, and parents to help build early language, articulation, and phonological skills. Through her fun-filled storybook adventures, Corky the Quirky Clown helps young readers boost their speech and language skills with laughter and learning. And guess what? She's offering a free downloadable book, Eek! I Hear a Squeak. It's perfect for parents, teachers, and speech therapists. You can get yours today at slpstorytellers.com. Sick Days just got spectacular. In Charlotte and Penelope and the neighborhood stage, two sisters are stuck inside until their animal friends put on the show of the year. Meet a dolphin band leader, a tap-dancing rabbit, and the loudest geese you've ever heard. It's a rhyming, rollicking, read-along adventure your kids will absolutely love. You can find Charlotte and Penelope and the neighborhood stage by Teresa Argenbright wherever books are sold. Imagine a time before time, when light first touched the world and the animals roamed wild and free. The Day Time Began is a breathtaking picture book that retells the biblical story of creation with vibrant rhyme and rich full-page illustrations. Perfect for ages 2 to 8, this keepsake book features over 160 realistic animals and an online animal ID guide so kids can learn as they explore. With bonus classroom resources and an acted-out story motions online, this book is a gift that brings the beauty of God's creation to life. Give your child a story that stirs up hope in a good and gracious God. The Day Time Began. Available now at thedaytimebegan.com. Join us right now from San Francisco in California. Our guest is here today to celebrate George and Lenny Are Always Together. Please welcome to the show, Jon Agee. Hey, Jon, how are you?
Good, good. Thank you for having me.
Delighted to have you on. Jon and I just found out that we were both in the same city at the same time and didn't meet each other last Saturday.
Yeah, no. It's Hudson.
At beautiful Hudson, New York. And when I left, my GPS took me through, didn't take me the way I expected it to take me home, and I got to see a lot of Hudson and the county, and we're a really lovely part of the world.
It is, yeah. I grew up south of there, just outside of New York City in Nyack,
Sure.
It's near the Tappan Zee Bridge. And my mom is from up in that area in Troy, New York. So,
Hmm.
yeah. And then a lot of my friends have moved up or have second homes up in that region. So that's what I was doing up there.
That's what you were doing. I was at the Hudson Children's Book Festival meeting a lot of the past guests and some future, soon to be recorded guests of the show at the event. I really like children's book festivals. It's just family fun, family entertainment. It's safe. You know, the ones that I've been to are safe. That gives kids a chance to meet some of their favorite authors, meet some new authors, and just celebrate reading.
Yeah. I like festivals as well, not only for meeting my readers, but it's often a chance to connect to old colleagues of mine who live in different parts of the country, or uh, or in my same city, but we never get to see each other outside of a festival. It's funny
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah. In fact, as I'm thinking about it, I think all of the guests that I've met here on Reading with Your Kids, with the exception of maybe one or two, I met through participating in a children's book festival.
Yeah. I remember one festival I was at in Austin, Texas. I'm just wandering along by myself, and along comes Sergio Ruzier, Bob Shea, and Chris Rosca, three really great picture book writers, illustrators. And they were talking about, they came up to me, and it was as if we would just live next door, just very casual. They said, "John, we have a question for you. Did Lou Reed die?" Because there had been some viral thing on the internet saying that Lou Reed was ill or had died, and I didn't know the answer. But that's kind of how casual and laid back. And
Yeah.
the next thing you know, you're just going to some food truck and sitting down and having a picnic together, even
Yeah.
though you haven't seen each other for maybe 3 years. That's
Mhm.
what's fun about festivals. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Hey,
I think Lou Reed had died, but anyway.
tell us about George and Lenny, and why are they always together?
George and Lenny. Well, here's I don't know. Is this video or is this
We
audio?
just released the audio, but we're
Okay.
holding up the cover art, and
Okay, well, I can describe it.
please do. Please.
George is a bear, big bear. Lenny is a rabbit. They are always together. They're best friends. And this book takes place in a playground. And as they're going from the swing set to the seesaw, Lenny says, "George, have you ever noticed we're always together?" And George, who's the bear, says, "Yes, isn't it wonderful? We're never alone." To which Lenny says, "Hey, I wonder what it's like to be alone."
Mm.
And this is because Lenny is much more inquisitive and more rational minded, and George is more like this big child,
Uh-huh.
very naive and playful and imaginative. So when Lenny suggests that he'd like to find out what it's like to be alone, George is distressed. I mean, he's thinking, why would anybody want to be alone, right? But Lenny's determined. So he says he goes off to find a place to be by himself, and this kind of completely upsets their friendship. George is kind of hurt. He's even a little defiant. If you can be alone, then I can be alone too. So even though George, that's the last thing on earth he wants to be, he doesn't want to be alone. So they both will eventually find places to be alone, places that are unique to who they are, and that will surprisingly bring them back together again. So that's kind of the story of that's kind of the story of George and Lenny
Oh.
on the surface.
It sounds that, we see a lot of characters who are big and could be very scary, but they're often portrayed like George as just sweet, lovable, lovable people or creatures. Why do you think kids are so attracted to those type of characters?
It's funny. When I finished this book, and I was working on a companion to it, a sequel. I'd never thought, it never occurred to me that George and Lenny they both display kind of characteristics that I share, that are in me. I have a very playful, childlike side, but I also I'm a very mature person, and I'm very curious and rational, and I appreciate logic and so forth. So, but I love those two sides. I love those two sides in everybody, in all sorts, in grown-ups and children alike, of course. But I think with George definitely represents that childlike nature, that fun, innocent, playful quality, and I think that's probably what kids certainly appeals to kids. Lenny, at the same time, is curious, and kids are often very curious too, and he wants to find out. He wants to he's also a little more courageous than George, and some kids are more they have more they're more ready to take a chance, or they're ready to experience things in life that, unlike other kids. And so that would be Lenny, who really wants to find out what this is all about, what it means to be by yourself. And turns out, in this playground, there is it's a tree house, a kind of a artificial tree house, and he steps in, and there's only room enough for one little tiny creature. So he goes inside this tree house, and sure enough, there's things to do in there. There's books to read. There's blocks you can build with. There's a trumpet you can play on an instrument. There's a drawing pad with crayons you can draw. So there are plenty of things you can do alone, as he discovers. But what about George? That's the kind of the mystery here in the story, because it gets dark out. Because Lenny's having a good time in this little treehouse, and he finally looks out at the little porthole. There's only one little window there, and he looks out and he discovers that there's another thing you can do when you're alone, and that is just to sit and think. So he sits there and he thinks, and of course the first thing that occurs to him or that crosses his mind is, what's going on with George? I hope he found a good place to be alone, And so he looks out the window, and he doesn't see. He sees the rest of the playground, but there's no George. And he calls George. He says, "George, hello, George, where are you?" And do I give the spoiler alert here?
If it's up to you, if you'd like to. I think there are many little kids listening to this, but
yeah. Well, when I've read this book in front of kids, when Lenny pokes his head out the window to look for George, you can sort of see where George is.
Okay.
Because this little treehouse, it has a flat roof on it. Okay. And when Lenny pokes his head out the window, you can see that there's something just the top of the roof. You can see that there's something sitting on top of the treehouse roof. And so when Lenny calls, "Hello, George, where are you?" He looks up, and George says, "I'm right here." And George has been sitting on the roof the whole time. And he says, "Come on up," And so Lenny joins him, and realizes, wow, it's a beautiful place to be alone, because they're just the two of them looking up at the moon. And George says, "And you know why it's the best place to be alone?" And Lenny says, "Yeah, because we're together." So they can both experience being alone together. So it works out there. George is more, his imagination kind of, anyway, it all comes together.
That's neat. You were telling me that, there's a little bit of George in you, and there's a little bit of Lenny in you. were you aware of that when you created these characters, or was it something you just like, oh, I'm little George and I got a little bit.
Um, I know. I didn't think of it when I was writing the story or when I was drawing the pictures. It was something that occurred to me later. Yeah, for sure. And I imagine there's something about me in all my books, and most authors, there's some element to them. But in this one, I thought it was even more apparent to me that, oh yeah, I have these are two sides of myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't
Neat.
know. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, what came first, the images, the images of George and Lenny, or the story?
I think it was a picture of a bear and a rabbit talking to each other, because a lot of my story ideas come from drawing pictures of people or kids or animals talking to each other and having conversations, and then seeing where these conversations go. And so I guess it might have started with the drawing of a bear and a rabbit. And then where was it? Oh, well, it was the fact that they were always together. There was something about just writing a line that's like, well, they're always together. Thinking like, wait a second, what wouldn't it be strange if two people were always together and one of them decided, I want to find out what it's like to be by myself. What would happen to that relationship?
Mm-hmm.
There was a movie not so long ago. It was a kind of a really visceral kind of a grown-up movie, not for kids, called what was it called? The Banshees of Inisherin or something. It was with Russell. What's his name? Oh God.
Bro?
No, I can't remember. It's about it takes place in Ireland. These two men who were like old friends. They always go to the same pub together, and they always order the same pint, and everything's just, they have such a routine. And then one of them decides, you know what? I'm kind of bored with you. I don't want to see you anymore. It's a friendship where one of them is tired, but it gets so far, the drama, it just is quite elaborate. There's some a little violence that takes place here. So, but this is a kid's show, so we won't go into that. But anyway, it is about a friendship where one of the friends wants to be alone, so much so that he's very brutal about it. In George and Lenny, it's simply a curiosity from Lenny the rabbit wanting to experience some other part of their life together, and he discovers that you can have quite a good time when you're by yourself. And George finds out that he can be alone in his own way, even though he's just sitting right on top of the roof of the treehouse.
Yeah. So, neat. I love that. I bet there are a lot of kids out there who, or a lot of parents who observe their kids and can relate to that, where their kid has this best friend and they're always together.
Yeah, I imagine. I know I have, as a grown-up, I have plenty of friends who I really adore. I've known them all my life, but we have. I love space too. I think that's probably just normal, right?
Yeah.
To have other experiences. Even with my wife, we share a lot of experiences together, but we need our alone time too.
I hear you.
Maybe not when we were first married, but after 22 years now, yeah.
Well, my beautiful wife and I have 35, and she definitely relishes her alone time, or at least her time away from me.
Yeah, you're right.
I can't blame her.
Same here.
Hey, when did it become apparent to you that you love creating kids' books and just want to do this?
I've been writing and illustrating books since I was a little kid. In fact, I have books that I created when I was 6 years old. Those are some of the earliest ones. I didn't know I was going to be doing this professionally when I was 6 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But I have these books that my mother saved. Thank you, Mom, for that. And I could write my name, Jon, John, and I could write the word book, BOOK. And then I would tell her that I would draw the pictures and then tell her the story, and she'd write in the words that I, said. So I have proof that there was something going on that has not stopped since I was a long time ago.
Yeah.
60 years ago. So yeah, sorry.
Any thoughts of bringing those 60-year-old books out of the closet and
there's one that's up on the wall there. I'm looking at it. It's called John Book. A lot of them are just called John Book. And then that one's a picture of a guy with a train, and the text, the story is pretty repetitive. He goes into a tunnel, he comes out of the tunnel, the train gets broken, he returns the train to his house, and then he has dinner with his mom, and they're very happy. I bring some of these books to schools and share them with kids who get a kick out of them.
Yeah.
I'm not planning on these being published.
Well, I'm sure that you are inspiring kids when you share those books with them.
Well, I mean, I think when I share early books that I created, it certainly demystifies the whole process, and they think, "Oh my goodness, this guy John, he created that sketchy little primitively drawn book with the pages barely taped together." Yeah, so that's hopefully what I hope I can communicate to them, that we didn't just suddenly start creating these beautiful picture books. I started just like they did.
Yeah. That's so cool. Hey, any chance we'll be seeing more of George and Lenny together?
Yeah. I'm working on a second partner book to it. Maybe there'll be more than that, but the second one is pretty funny. It's called George and Lenny Are Looking at Clouds. So so it starts with the two of them looking up into the sky, and Lenny sees an alligator, clouds that are shaped like an alligator. And he says, "Look, George, it's a cloud shaped like an alligator." And George looks up in the clouds, and he says, "Look, Lenny, it's a flying sheep." And Lenny sees up in the clouds a cloud that's shaped like a sheep. And he says, "No, George, that's not a flying sheep. That's a cloud shaped like a sheep." And George says, "Wait, Lenny, I could swear I heard that cloud go ba." And Lenny says, "No, clouds don't go ba and sheep don't fly." And he says, "Just ask a sheep." And there's a sheep standing right there. And George goes up to the sheep and said, "Hey, sheep, excuse me, do you fly?" And the sheep goes, "Ba." And Lenny says, "See what I tell you? It's impossible for a sheep to fly." Anyway, that's how the story begins. But eventually, what will happen is Lenny will be up in the tall branch of a tree, and a snake will have followed him up this tree, and he's desperately, doesn't know how to get down the tree. The snake is blocking his path, and George is at the bottom of the tree and says, "Lenny, I'm sorry, I can't help you out. I'm afraid of heights, and I'm deathly afraid of snakes." And then they hear something coming from up in the clouds, and they're pretty sure it sounded like a ba. You turn the page, and sure enough, there's a sheep coming down from the clouds, and Lenny jumps on the sheep's back, and George catches the sheep, and George says, "Well, gee whiz, Lenny, you were right again. This is an amazing cloud." And Lenny says, "No, George, it's not a cloud at all. It's a it's a flying sheep. You know, you were right. Anyway, so there's a goofy little twist there.
Yeah. Neat. I like that. I like your sense of humor. I think kids will really enjoy it too.
Well, I hope so. Yeah.
We should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about George and Lenny are always together and find out more about you.
Good. I'll be in bookstores here in the Bay Area, and I'll be visiting schools.
Uh-huh.
As soon as the book's out at the end of May. Yeah.
Excellent. And is there a website folks can visit?
Oh yeah, sure. My website's just my name, jonagee.com, and they'll see this book. They'll see all the other books I've created, and a little bit about me thrown in there too. And there's a nice page in there called 20 Questions, so that you kids can get a little more. It's illustrated too, so they get a little more background about me. Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, real quick, what's the most interesting, surprising, or weird question that kids have asked you at one of your events?
Oh, the weird. Gee. Oh my goodness. I don't know. A weird question the kids ask me? Well, I mean, the one you get all the time, and it's like, how many books have you written? Right? And that's a perfectly good question because now it's, as I'm getting older, I'm kind of amazed that it's getting up to over 40 books.
Awesome.
Then they often ask, what is your favorite book? And that one's a tough one because I hate to pick out a favorite book of mine at the expense of all the other books I've written. I think that's a tough one. So, and then there's another one the kids ask. It's pretty common. Favorite book? How many books? What's your favorite book written by somebody else? That's another. Oh, somebody did ask. One kid did ask me, "What's your least favorite book that you've written?" I really could not answer that. I thought that would be.
Yeah.
Which is the book of yours that you actually don't like? I avoided the answering that question somehow. I can't remember. Anyway.
Very cool. Well, we've had a great time speaking to the author and illustrator of George and Lenny Are Always Together. Our guest has been Jon Agee. Hey, Jon, thanks so much for being on Reading with Your Kids.
Thank you so much for having me.
Before we invite our guest into the studio, I would love to invite you to visit a very special website. It's clownswithoutborders.org. Clownswithoutborders.org. This is a group that I absolutely adore. I am part of Clowns Without Borders, and I had the honor of being part of the 2023 tour of El Salvador. I had so much fun joining with artists from all over the world to bring a smile to people who really needed it and really appreciated it too. And we would love for you to join us as a monthly Joy Maker. The Joy Makers, they're a family of people just like you who love to laugh and make other people feel good. So please take a moment and visit clownswithoutborders.org and consider joining me as a Joy Maker. Join us right now from sunny San Diego in California. Our guest is here today to celebrate his really groundbreaking, I think, series. It's called the Time Soldiers Adventure Series. Please welcome to the show, Robert Gould. Robert, how are you?
I'm great, Jed. Thanks for having me on here.
Delighted to have you on. I received all 6 of the Time Soldiers Adventure Series books last week, and wow, they are impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah. It kind of feels like I'm going to the movies when I open up the books.
Interesting you say that. I designed them as a new genre, basically. I call it a movie book because, as you notice, the text is on the bottom, or in the case of Rex, the first one, it's reversed on the sides, but the text reads across the bottom in paragraph form, but the pictures, it is like watching a movie. And we found in our research that especially with boys, you have to engage them. You have to engage their brain visually. So we put tons of detail in the shadows and the highlights and in all the images. And what it does is it engages more of the brain, literally, and we watched their eyes as they were reading. We watched their eyes move from the picture to the words, picture, words, back and forth. So that meant that they were going up to the picture for more understanding of what the words said. And it worked fabulously well.
That's fascinating. So you actually took the time to sit down and either watch or have some kind of machine track their eye movements as they're reading the books?
Yeah, well, we watched them back then. That was when we were doing the research for that back then. That was in 1999, doing the original research. And I spent a year on that. Went around talking to teachers, students, lots and lots of kids, librarians, and we would give them the basically big sheets of proofs of the pages before we printed the books, and we watched them read. And what we were looking for was something similar to how a kid plays a video game. Mm. So when they're playing a video game, it's the same thing. There's eye movement in two places, which activates, again, more of the brain. And when you activate more of the brain, they retain way more. Mm-hmm. Way more. Yeah. Actually, about 400% more of what they're reading.
You know, we have a lot, and this is not to disparage anybody, but we have a lot of authors who come on and say, I had this idea for a book, and I sat down to write it. The creation of this series, it sounds much more intense and much more, I guess, kind of scientific.
It was. The reason I started it, I had two sons, and we read to them every night. My wife and I are avid readers, and they weren't reading. I mean, they just didn't want to read by themselves. And then I started asking their friends and, neighbors, and then went into the school and started asking the teachers, librarians, and then it spread out. And I was going around the country asking people, what's going on with boys? Why is this reluctant reader syndrome basically saying that boys don't like to read? And I wanted to find out why, and then I wanted to come up with a solution for it. And so I approached it as a problem to solve, and that takes research.
It almost sounds like you took this on from an engineering point of view, almost.
I did. If you look at the images, especially a child, when you put these books in front of a child, the first thing they do is they will, if you give them the book, they'll look at the cover, their eyes get big. I've seen this all over the country. And then they open it up and they are like glued to it. Mm-hmm. And in order for that to happen, you've got to have something behind it. So we found that putting a lot of detail into the images, especially in the shadows and the highlights and things and little tiny details. There's a page in Rex 1 where if you show it to an adult and ask them where the T-Rex is, they won't find it for about 30 seconds. A child will find it in 4 to 5 seconds. It's just, and so we applied all the things that we learned and came up with something that worked. And when we were going into elementary school classrooms where we put the books in, we'd have the kids read them, and then we'd go in and ask them questions. And the kids, this was amazing. The boys that sat in the back of the room, of the classroom, and it doesn't matter where in the country this was, it happened everywhere that I went. The boys that were in the back of the classroom that would normally never raise their hand when asked a question about what they just read, right? Mm-hmm. Some of them literally almost standing on their chairs, waving their hands. It's like, Mrs. Johnson, pick me, pick me, pick me. Because for once they had the answer, because they were retaining so much more of what they were reading. And this happened everywhere. It was incredible.
I'm just so excited that you and others are kind of looking, and I'm hoping and praying that if this is a trend that we're sitting down and looking at how kids actually learn, as opposed to trying to train kids to fit into a certain style of learning.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. And the reason I started with boys and you know, the name of my website and everything, boys and girls learn differently.
Mm-hmm.
So the male brain as a boy needs to be engaged visually. It's really important. If you don't engage it visually, the information's going in one ear and out the other, or in the case of reading, you know, they're not getting it. They're not retaining what they're reading. Whereas girls, it's more auditory, and they're just totally different. So when you give children something that really engages them, then they want to learn. The problem back then and even now is there just weren't enough titles that were of interest to boys.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's still an issue comparatively speaking, you know, with how many book titles there are for girls. But yeah, you've got to engage that brain, and then their whole process of learning is different.
Mm-hmm.
They're assimilating more. So if they assimilate more, and it's something, if you write in a way that captures their imagination, then they have questions. Then you have interaction with the teacher or the parent or the librarian or friends. And then when you have interaction, that's learning, you know,
mm-hmm.
and it works.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly, my family was a great example of that. My son is somebody who's loved graphic novels, video games, just manga, devoured all of that stuff. My daughter liked it a little bit, but she loves reading text, and that even holds true today. They're both wonderful, successful adults, but still my son would prefer to sit down and read a graphic novel before he'd sit down and read a novel, and my daughter is the opposite.
Exactly. And that's common all over the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know.
Let's talk. I definitely want to talk a little bit more about the creation process, but let's let everybody know the titles in the book. We've been mentioning Rex. And by the way, I don't know what you call them because they don't seem like illustrations. The pictures, the images in the books, it seems like you took a photograph of an actual T-Rex, and I don't know where you would have gotten a photograph like that.
Well, I used the time portal, so.
That's it.
So back then, what we did was I took pictures of the animatronic dinosaurs when they came to San Diego, and then I went to Columbus, Ohio when they had them there too. Photographed them from all angles, and then went to the zoo and took pictures of lizards, elephants, snakes, all reptiles, all kinds of things to get textures. Mm-hmm. And then we would combine the two in Photoshop to make it look, real. Now, you don't need to do that, but back then that's what we did.
Yeah, incredible.
And yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go please.
I was going to say, so everything started with photographs. We shot a lot with green screen. Everything was composited in Photoshop. So the kids literally were acting, and we'd put them in a studio. We had lights to properly light things, and then we would put the backgrounds in Photoshop. So it's like creating a movie, basically, only it's stills.
That's exactly what it sounds like. And so, in addition to the book entitled Rex, I think it's the title.
Yes.
Yes. You also have Pirates, and what are the other titles in the series?
Well, there's the first book is Rex, and that's the first book in the series, and then there's Rex 2, and that's where the T-Rex literally comes back through the time portal that the kids go through in Rex 1. It comes into modern day times. And there's some big lessons in there for the kids as to assumptions they had about the T-Rex and things like that. But that was to show that the portal works both ways, both dimensions. The next one was Patch, and that's a pirate story. And it's the same thing. The kids go through the portal and end up getting basically captured by some pirates and then split up and rescued, and that's a great adventure. And then there's Arthur is book number 4, and that's about King Arthur. The kids go back and they meet King Arthur, and that's a whole adventure. And then they find out they meet Merlin the magician, and they find out about magic and whether it's real or not. And it's a really fun story. And then 5th book is Mummy. And so they go back to ancient Egypt, and they meet a young pharaoh, and they learn about a mummy, and that's when they get hold of the magic stone. So all throughout the series, each book goes into the next, and they learn as they go that there are these little blue glowing stones, and when they find them, they collect them, and they keep them. And those stones allow them to later on determine where they're going to go in time or history. So the villain in the story is someone who's also collecting the stones, and he has a lot more, and he's trying to keep them from getting enough stones to be able to go in and basically control and expose some things about history and what's actually happening.
Wow.
The last one, Samurai, and that one is they go back in time because they wanted to meet a samurai, so they were able to actually determine where to go and what year, and so they go there. And one of the kids' father owns a costume company in Hollywood, so by book 4. Or book 5 rather, they are able to go in and get costumes so they can go back and fit into the time period that they land in. So
very neat, very neat. I just love it. I'm curious. You mentioned one of the characters has a connection to Hollywood. You are in California. It almost sounds like you have a connection to Hollywood. Were you in the industry before you came up with this idea?
No. Nope. The only connection I had really was with Stan. Stan Lee was my mentor, and that's basically the only connection I had with Hollywood. We did do a Spider-Man and an X-Men book, and actually, Warner Brothers did come knocking on my door saying, "Hey, we'd like you to do a DC universe book," and at any rate, that didn't happen. For just making mistakes, but that's as close as I came to Hollywood.
Well, that's a pretty I take that. With 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, I think having a strong connection with Stan Lee, that probably tops being just a line photographer or something on a film project.
Yeah, it was fun. He was a wonderful man, and he was literally the first real children's literacy advocate. Back with the comics, he knew that kids didn't want to read books; they had trouble with that, and so he developed characters. For when he was working for Marvel. And he created the types of characters, and then, working with his artists, you give a kid one of those comics, like I was a kid. I started out with Spider-Man #1, and I had all the comics, for all the Marvel series for years. And I would rather read that than anything else because it excited my imagination. And we tried to take it another step further with the movie book style, which, just kind of, like you said, in an engineering sense approach, it works better because it just engages more the brain. So.
Yeah. You were telling me before we hit record that there was a lot of opposition to getting these books out there back 20 or so years ago. What was the biggest complaint? What did the powers that be say? The reason was?
Yeah, that was a sad story. That was that. Anyway, what it did was it kind of broke us. But back then, we were quite a bit ahead of our time, I guess. The powers that be said, number one, we don't like the word soldiers in the title for something for kids. And, they're not soldiers, but when we did our research, we said you can have any outfit you want, any costume you want, because we can create anything. And you can be, one of any one of these, 10 different names or and this was time soldiers. Overwhelmingly, that's what they wanted. And they wanted to, they wanted skateboard helmets and the boots and the fatigues. But that's what they said, and it was overwhelming that's what they did. And when I asked Stan, I said, Stan, what do I do? And he goes, you make that title, Time Soldiers, as big as you can across the top of the book. And he goes, and you give the kids the outfits and the names, whatever, that they chose, because that's your research. It's telling you this is what they want. Well, the powers that be didn't like that. Even though there's no violence, there's just nothing like that in the books. And kids love them. I have copies of books that I've gotten here in San Diego locally that I gave books away all over the country, but a lot of them here in San Diego to the libraries. And these things were tattered and taped together. I've never seen any books that worn out and completely, like literally every page taped together. And I would just go in every couple of years and just replace them, but it tells you that the kids loved that format, and to be kept out of the marketplace was astounding to me. It's like, look, we've got something, we tested it. Our books were chosen over everything else. We got letters from all over the country. We gave away 100,000 books. And teachers and librarians saying these are the most popular books in our school libraries. I mean, by far. And, it just crushed us. But they didn't like those things. They didn't like the pictures. They said there's nothing out there like this. I'm like, well, yeah, it's new. It's going to work. And we tested it, and it did. And the kids retained far more information than what they would normally do. But now we're rebooting. So.
And I'm super happy that you are, and I'm really happy that we're living in a time where the powers that be aren't as powerful as they used to be. And publishing has become much more democratic, not politically democratic, but just more, people have more access to it. Let's touch real quickly. You have another series for younger kids.
The Big Stuff books are they're board books, and each book is it's like one is tractors and earth movers, and one is race cars, one's monster trucks. It's fire trucks, emergency vehicles. It's the type of books that I looked for when I was trying to find books for my boys when they were little. They would play with little trucks and cars and fire engines and things like that. And there was nothing out there that was any good. It was all junk. And so I said, all right, well, we'll just create something. And then the kids that are in the books that you see with the vehicles and things, they interact with the readers. So since the parents are reading it, the parents get a little chuckle out of it because there's some humor in it. And that's an important thing. You need to engage the parent as well, especially when they're reading to their children. If the parent's not interested, then it falls flat.
Yeah.
So we created it in a manner that they don't fall flat.
Yeah.
So it works.
Great. Well, let's tell everybody where they can go to find out more about the Time Soldiers Adventure Series and find out more about you and what's going on in your company.
Yeah. The website is greatbooksforboys.com. And you can see all the books in there. There's page samples, there's little video intros. There's information on my thoughts of why boys aren't reading and the whole reluctant reader syndrome and all that. And greatbooksforboys.com. People can reach me at robert@bigguybooks.com or robert@greatbooksforboys.com. But I'd love to hear from anybody that wants information, whatever.
And I love what I saw on your splash page. It's books boys love, but don't tell anyone girls love them too.
Right. Well, actually, in our sales, it's about 55% boys and 45% girls, which we didn't count on that, but it's interesting. We were just trying to create a niche market back then because it was the boys that were considered the reluctant readers. So, but yeah, girls love them too. I mean, that's great.
Yeah, it is great. We've had a great time speaking to the creator, the driving force behind the Time Soldiers Adventure Series. Our guest has been Robert Gould. Robert, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Jed. I really appreciate it. It's been fun.
Hey, we want to thank you so very much for joining us today on Reading with Your Kids. We truly appreciate you spending time with us. If you enjoyed the episode, please take a moment to share the link with a friend. Leave a 5-star review on your favorite podcast app, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a moment of Reading with Your Kids. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful, starting with our guest, Jon Agee. Please be sure to check out George and Lenny Are Always Together. Also want to thank Robert Gould. Please be sure to check out his Time Soldiers Adventure Series. I want to thank my amazing team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady, Dante Greco, L. Glassman. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all of her endless love and support. But most of all, we want to thank you, our listeners. You are the real magic behind Reading with Your Kids. Every time you read with your kids, you're helping to make the world a better place. And we are so honored to be on that journey with you. Until next time, keep reading, keep loving, and keep creating those magical moments together.
Yeah. Yo, gather round, kids, listen up real quick. I got a funny question. It's gonna make you giggle and tick. We learned about the moon, where the astronauts zoom. But here's a silly thought, does a fart make a room? Yeah. In space there's no air, it's a vacuum, you see. No sound waves can travel, that's the key. So if you let one rip while you're floating up high, it's gonna be silent and you won't hear a sigh. Does a fart make a noise on the moon when you're bouncing around like a cartoon? Underneath the stars with no one to hear, you can let it out, have no fear. Farts on the moon, what a hilarious thought. Only you will know, it's a secret you've caught. Imagine Buzz Lightyear zooming in space with a cosmic blast all over the place. Yeah. Floating in zero gravity's feeling so free, but no one can hear that tootie from he. Yeah. Giggling with friends as they drift and glide. Just keep it all quiet, let the laughter guide. It's a funny little game, we can all play along. Talking about farts like we're in a silly song. Does a fart make a noise on the moon when you're bouncing around like a cartoon underneath the stars with no one to hear. You can let it out, have no fear. Farts on the moon, what a hilarious thought. Only you will know, it's a secret you've caught. So when you're out there, don't you be shy in your spacesuits. Just let it fly, no one will know. Just you and the stars making moon jokes while you're traveling far. So gather your pals for a cosmic delight. Let the laughter echo through the infinite night. Does a fart make a noise on the moon when you're bouncing around like a cartoon underneath the stars with no one to hear? You can let it out, have no fear. Farts on the moon, what a hilarious thought. Only you will know, it's a secret you've caught. So next time you learn about planets and stars, remember this lesson wherever you are. In a world full of wonders, let your laughter be bright. Farts on the moon, it's a giggle tonight. Let's keep the fun going, just let it flow. Because laughter is key wherever we go.